Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the invisible biological forces, specifically the hidden dopamine loops that are secretly driving our impulse buys and our riskiest financial trades. If you've ever, wondered why it's just so incredibly hard to stick to a budget or why that add to cart button feels literally irresistible, well, you are in exactly the right place. Let's just jump right in. So picture this. It's a totally normal day, you're walking down the street, and bam, you walk past an ice cream shop. Suddenly, you've got this intense craving. You're already imagining how amazing it's going to taste. Or, hey, maybe you're up late at night, browsing online, throwing stuff in your cart, feeling this huge rush of excitement. But then, you actually eat the ice cream, or the package finally shows up 3 days later, and you just kind of feel let down, right? Why on earth does the chase almost always feel better than the catch?
Well, financial coach Raymond Iham hit the nail right on the head with this one. He says, you are not spending money on things, you are spending money on the feeling of wanting things. I mean, wow. That is a massive paradigm shift. It completely reveals that our impulse buys, they actually aren't failures of discipline. They're not a lack of willpower. They are totally predictable neurological events that modern platforms are actively exploiting. You're not buying a product, you're buying a feeling.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the illusion of wanting. Second, hyperbolic discounting explained. Third, weaponizing the dopamine loop. Fourth, the two-system brain. And finally, number 5, hacking your financial environment.
Part 1. The illusion of wanting. The biology of craving.
To really get this, we have to fundamentally rethink how our brain reacts to rewards. Now, most of us probably think of dopamine as the pleasure chemical, right? But neuroscientists like Kent Berridge actually separate our reward circuitry into two completely distinct systems. So, dopamine, that drives the intense wanting, the craving, the anticipation of that glowing, unopened box. But a totally separate opioid system is what drives the liking, the actual, literal pleasure of the experience once you consume it. Here's the catch, and it's a big one. That dopamine release peaks right before the purchase, not during consumption. Your brain is literally just chasing the anticipation, not the product itself. Moving to Section 2, hyperbolic discounting explained, valuing the future.
So, if we know our brains are hooked on immediate gratification, how do we ever manage to save for the future? Well, think about how we value things over time. A purely logical robot would value time and money on a nice, smooth, predictable curve. But we aren't robots. Our actual behavior looks more like what economists call hyperbolic discounting, which is really just a fancy way of saying we experience a massive, steep drop-off in patience when a reward is right in front of us. We plan perfectly well for the distant future, sure, but when that ice cream is right there, biology takes the wheel and demands it right now.
Section 3, weaponizing the dopamine loop, the gamification of finance.
And here's where things get a bit dark. Modern platforms know exactly how this works. A study out of Brown University looked at the Robinhood trading app and found this massive use of behavioral nudges to essentially gamify trading. We're talking variable reward cycles. That is the exact same mechanism that makes slot machines so insanely addictive. They use confetti animations to celebrate a trade, they hand out free stocks that basically feel like scratch-off lottery tickets, and they push one-click checkouts to strip away all friction. Retailers do the exact same thing with countdown timers on flash sales. These platforms are explicitly bypassing your logic to trigger those dopamine spikes, pushing us into addictive, short-term overtrading and overspending.
It gets crazier. Researchers at Stanford looked at a specific brain region called the nucleus accumbens. It's a major player in reward anticipation. And they discovered something fascinating. When this area is stimulated by completely unrelated things, like literally just showing subjects appealing pictures, people actually go on to take significantly larger financial risks right after. So that arousal just spills over, totally altering your financial choices without you even noticing.
Section 4. The two-system brain, the internal conflict.
Ultimately, what's happening here is our brains are staging a literal boxing match every single time we face a financial decision. In one corner, you've got your prefrontal cortex. This is the advanced, rational part of your brain. It uses logic, it has patience, it wants to stick to those long-term retirement goals. But in the other corner, you have the mesolimbic system. And this guy is older, he's faster, and he's driven entirely by emotion, impulse, and immediate dopamine hits. So when an app pings you with a flash sale or a stock is surging, that fast limbic system fires up instantly. It wants that hit. Your prefrontal cortex desperately needs a few seconds to step in and say, whoa, wait, we don't have the budget for this. But things like one-click checkout, they completely rob you of that critical delight. Section 5. Hacking your financial environment. Reclaiming your brain.
So since willpower alone is basically biologically doomed against these systems, we have to proactively hack our environment. Based on Dr. Judson Brewer's research, we can build a really strong defense by interrupting the habit loop, and it's a simple 3-step process. Step 1. Map your triggers. Just notice what you're feeling right before an impulse buy. Is it stress? Boredom? Social comparison? Step 2. Interrupt the loop. When that trigger fires, you have to physically relocate. Literally leave the room or put some kind of physical friction between you and the purchase. And step 3. Replace the reward. Instead of actually buying the thing, just throw it on a wish list. Adding an item to a list gives your brain a little micro dose of that anticipation reward, but you haven't spent a single dime.
Let's get really practical. Here are a few actionable interventions you can start using today to protect your baseline dopamine levels. First up, implement the 72-hour rule. Force a mandatory time delay on any non-essential purchases so that dopamine spike has time to just fade out. Second, delete those retail and trading apps from your phone, and for sure, disable your saved payment info. You want to make unconscious spending super inconvenient. Third, keep your spending and savings accounts at completely different institutions. That way, you can't just swipe money over in the heat of the moment. Fourth, and okay, this one's a bit wild, but addiction experts swear by it, use healthy stressors like cold plunges or ice baths. This naturally raises your baseline dopamine, so you aren't desperately seeking it from late-night online shopping. And finally, when you're paying down debt, start with the smallest balances first. Why? Because the thrill of zeroing out an account gives you a massive dopamine hit, meaning you're actually using your biology to create positive momentum.
We have definitely covered a lot of ground today, from the raw biology of craving to exactly how our digital world is weaponizing it against us. So I want to leave you with one final, pretty provocative question. Who is designing your financial environment? Because I promise you, if you don't intentionally design it to protect your goals, a retail or trading platform will be more than happy to do it for you. Take control of your brain's reward system today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.